Dear all, welcome to this new episode of this CATIA Talk. This time we will discuss about architecture with our CATIA champion Kerenza Harris. In this CATIA Talk, Kerenza Harris, lead architect at Morphosis Practice, will show how an increase in project complexity impacts the management of organization and how digital technologies can help us keep the project in control. Also, Kerenza will highlight the changes in Morphosis Practice, the evolution that is happening now, and as the workflows are evaluating quickly. For that, she will illustrate her talk with different cases from Morphosis Practice, but also cases from the school where she teaches, SciArc. The CATIA Talk will be held here in our building and civil infrastructure community, and it will give you the capacity to interact in live with our subject matter expert throughout the chat. So please don't hesitate to watch this CATIA Talk, and we wish you a very good day. Okay, so welcome, Kerenza. Thank you very much for being there on this session of the CATIA Talk. So first, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, and can you tell us about your work at Morphosis as an architect?
My name is Kerenza Harris, and I've been practicing architecture for over 10 years. I started my career at Gary Partners, which is Frank Gary's firm, and it's where I was introduced to CATIA. I started as a physical model maker, kind of dealing with the kind of analog part of putting together projects and buildings, and then I got really interested in the moment where we have to take all this physical information and translate it into digital form. And so that started a whole kind of interest in the kind of optimization and rationalization of form, and also transforming a piece of wood, a piece of paper into what will be ultimately a built piece of work. And I did that for a few years, and then I left the profession for a couple of years to teach at a university. I was teaching studio, kind of shifting a little bit and thinking about what I wanted to do. And I got approached by Morphosis Architect in, I think it was 2008. They had just won the Far Tower competition, which was a competition for a skyscraper at La Défense in France. And they had issues with, so the tower itself had a very complex geometry, and the design, the concept, the ideas, and the movement of the form was going faster than they could kind of follow in digital form. And so they did not have the right support digitally to allow the design to flow at the speed that it needed to flow. So I came in the firm with CATIA, and we started to rebuild the tower and rebuild the systems behind the different assemblies in a way that was connecting directly with the kind of forming or the kind of morphing of the geometry. And we that started the history of that software in the firm, and began a whole new kind of trajectory where we are really pushing kind of a centralization of digital information in order to support and help advance the kind of the design of buildings. And so my particular areas of expertise are usually located in places, in buildings or architecture in general, that have a certain level of complexities. And the complexities can be geometrical, they can be just about the assemblies, it can be the sheer amount of information that we have to deal with. And it's very much about trying to resolve certain areas of the building inside and outside that require a higher level of control, maybe a higher level of detail, and maybe even some direct relationship with fabricators and materials and things like that. And so that's been my role in the office in the last few years.
Okay, thank you very much. So this the good transitions to, so I can ask the question about what is your usage of CATIA, and how long have you been working on with what kind of project?
Yeah, so I was introduced to CATIA in 2000, I want to say 3 or 4, again at with Frank Gary's kind of workflow and the way they're approaching the making and the designing of buildings. And then at Morphosis, I was more involved in like guiding the direction in which we wanted to go. And so CATIA is used at Morphosis Architects in a way in a more kind of a specific way, meaning that we have only a very specific amount of station or experts who use the program. And again, we use it in areas of complexity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll be a lot of the public spaces where you may have big atriums or geometrical kind of again, complexities or geometrical moments that need to be resolved. We'll also use it, as I said, where we want to push or innovate in very specific ways. And it might
Mm.
be in relation to materials, it might be in relation to how pieces come together. And by using CATIA, it allows us a higher level of control over
Mm-hmm.
the different pieces of the puzzle. And so then we're just kind of like very careful about our choices of involvement with
Yeah. Okay.
CATIA for specific projects. And then we also have projects that are really, really big.
Mm.
And those projects sometimes, uh, you know, as much as we want, are difficult to manage in other software. And we find that the 3D Experience platform is actually a place where we can retain the same level of control as we want as building, designing or planning an urban kind of project as much as the designing of a chair, right? So,
Mm.
so I think that we're trying to preserve the workflow and the design intent, by regardless of the type of architecture that we're doing or the size of the architecture that we're doing. And CATIA allows us to kind of get that done.
Mm. Okay. I understand. That's very interesting. So it's kind of it's you can do both of things that could be simple and also things that could be very complex at the same time. And it helps you keeping the balance on the project on both things, on both
Yeah,
sides.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. And so, can you tell us maybe I don't, maybe a good experience that you have? Probably I hope you had a lot, but good experience with 3D Experience CATIA, and maybe if you have an idea on the collaboration on the platform.
So for the CATIA experience, I think that, you know, we are trying to think of digital modeling and digital document delivery, not so much as a software, but as a platform. And what I mean is that it's now a repository or a place, a nexus of where a lot of things are happening at the same time, right? So we're no longer thinking of we're making this and that software, then we stop and we go to the next software, then we're making things in the software and we go out, right? There's the moments of connection between all
Mm-hmm.
these pieces that is essential, because we cannot get away with that state right now. I think in the office we're working on at least 4 or 5 different design software, and then for the delivery we may have 2 or 3 depending on the project. And
Yeah.
so I think that the strength right now is the background or the back of house, where we're putting all these interoperability things together so that we can seamlessly travel from one software to the other, because we have not yet found a unique place where all of that can happen in one software. And I don't know that we necessarily would want it, because the practice of architecture requires like a flexibility and a kind of like a wide variety of things that we need to access in order to do certain tasks. But what I really think 3D Experience CATIA is starting to do, and just the platform in general, is to create an environment that is linking some of these things. They're starting to link some of these things together in a more seamless way. And so it's less effort on our part to kind of have to still write, scripts or like establish workflows that allow us to go from one format to another, one software to another. And what I like about the kind of the thinking in the platform is that it starts to look at an environment versus a specific software that does a specific thing, right? And so I think it's going in the right direction. And I think globally, the philosophy is the same on our side from what we're doing. We obviously don't have a whole platform at hand. We're not software maker, but we are definitely operating in the same kind of principles in terms of what we're trying to do. And so I think the 3D experience CATIA is helping us indirectly for sure, but like start to think about how these pieces of the puzzle can start to connect in a seamless way.
Great. Thank you so much, Kerenza, for answering to these questions. Now in the CATIA talk, I think it's the time that you can present us the topic that you were interested to present today. So I'm going to leave the floor to you, and then you can start whenever you're ready. Well, thank you so much, Kerenza, for answering to the questions. Again, thank you so much for being there. So now it's the time for you, to present the topic you're interested to present. So I'm going to leave the floor to you, and we'll meet again at the end if any questions. Okay? Thank you very
Okay, thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think that I just wanted to show you a little bit what we do right now and some of the projects that we have under construction at this time that somewhat demonstrate some of the ideas that I discussed with you in the conversation. So Morphosis Architect today is definitely international firm. We have projects all over the world. We have a pretty wide library archive of projects that we have been working on for the last few decades. And so the kind of practice has evolved, obviously, all the way up to today with an increase in variety and typology of projects that we're working on, in not only in the type of buildings and projects that we're approaching, but also sizing. Size is always a big factor here. So I think it has definitely helped us to strategize about how we want to organize ourselves in the office and establish workflows that allows us to have that flexibility to be able to, as I said before, design a chair as well as designing a skyscraper or millions of square foot of buildings. So I think that it is part of this underlying organization that we have to try to systematize some of these processes. This is the ENI headquarters in San Donato. It's in Milan, Italy, and it's under construction right now. And this was also a competition that we won. And we used CATIA pretty extensively on this project. We used it on the exterior facades, some of the shaping of the some complex areas that we have in the project. And the project is also maybe an interesting approach here where we're actually lifting the landscape and creating a more layered kind of urban condition. Now, the facades themselves are 360 degrees round, right? So we're looking at a performance requirement in terms of how does the like solar insulation and other elements in the facade that may help us kind of design or define shape and types of coverage that we want to have. So these are some of the construction pictures where you see the glazing, and then on top of that, we'll lay out a perforated panel skin element that you saw in the first image, which is two different types, one blue, one orange, we call it. And those are stainless steel panels that go over the project. So the design of that facade was quite a large project. And then you can see also here beneath that, the bones of the buildings are also very carefully crafted, and we have these large cantilever for the bridges, like pedestrian bridges that connects the buildings together. We also have other types of like very intricate strategies for how the tectonic of the building is put together, and I think all of that is possible because we're really careful and paying attention to all these different pieces of the puzzle, right? And we're able to really coordinate them and retain a certain level of control. And what I mean by that is that we're able to connect all these different layers of the skin and all these layers of the bones together, and they are interacting with each other, and there is that relationship that's established, and that allows us to continue to design and modify and adjust to heighten the performance of the building and, again, retain control overall. This is a train station in Vigo, Spain. This one is also under construction, and you can see it's quite long. It's a TGV station, so it has the usual requirements in terms of the program. The trains are on the ground, and we have designed this whole station as well in a variety of software. CATIA was mostly involved in the front facade that we see here, which is a very, very long facade that changes shape as it moves forward. It was involved in some of the interior geometries and how to coordinate with structure as well. And then this is the central atrium that's under construction as well, where the main terminal is when people are entering and exiting. You can see that because we are pushing the tectonic and how pieces are coming together, the geometry and how that plays, we really need to have kind of a strong approach in terms of the digital control that we want over all these assemblies in order to make the project feasible, constructible, and on budget as well, right? So those are obviously always us trying to deliver an architecture that promotes, the client, what the architecture is going to be used for, and then also obviously making it kind of globally something that is efficient and that performs at the high level. This is a really, really good project that we have under construction in China right now. It's in Nanjing, and it's a conference center, and it's almost 2 million square feet, right? So it's quite big, and has a tower. The tower is a hotel, and the main kind of conference area is that lily pad, or that like plinth element that you have underneath it. And that one also was partially worked in CATIA. And we also coordinated all the exterior shell envelope elements in CATIA just to make sure that we're tracking materials, quantities and etc., all these things. And obviously, part of the work that we do is that we present you a roof that has thousands of metal panels, and behind the scene, we're obviously not proposing thousands of different panels. We're proposing something that looks very unique, but it actually is made out of very repetitive elements, and that the assemblies are also using a lot of repetitive elements. And so all of that requires a certain control over how we are conceptualizing and how we're modeling the elements, and a certain knowledge about material fabrication and documentation as well. So all of these pieces come into play for us to be able to deliver this type of architecture without making things too complicated, because there's an organization behind that. So this is a picture of the tower as it is getting built right now. And this is a picture from underneath the large roof with these very beautiful truss system that are supporting it. So this is, almost built. This is the last project that I wanted to show you today. It's the Orange County Museum of Art. So this is a very small museum, and it's local to our office. We are in Los Angeles, so it's very close to here. And this is a project that is also under construction right now. And again, on this one, we manage two spaces in CATIA, the exterior envelope and the interior atrium. And the atrium is located right here. Right, so we have an interior space and an exterior space, and we have again larger concepts about what the architecture is, what does it do, how does it represent, you know, the kind of philosophy of the client, and how we can also try to utilize public spaces and create green spaces within the architecture. So again, I just wanted to mention that because there's a bigger, obviously, philosophy about what architecture is and how we're putting it together. And again, our workflow always functions with analog information. So we do have a kind of a back and forth between different types of information, and it always is integrated in the workflow. So we'll have, you know, a high focus on data. We have focus on documentation, you know, 2D drawings, 3D drawings, and we'll also have immersives in the workflow. And so that's where the crux of this whole system is, to be able to kind of go back and forth without stopping and going every time, because we need to move from one thing to the other. And so this is our CATIA model. And what we do in CATIA in this particular project is that we did not necessarily form or shape the building directly. So what we did is that we bring the information, the kind of the form, right, the sculpture of the building in CATIA, and then we run a series of internal tools that start to break down the information and rationalize it on the big picture. So it's like the DNA of the architecture, and it also extracts a series of kind of information that we're going to be using in our drawings. So in this case, it would probably be like geometry information. It rebuilds the baseline surfaces as well, so that we can have a broader canvas on which we can start to look at the facade. And we do that for the entire exterior scope that we're going to be working on in CATIA. And then obviously that's the kind of the final kind of filleted portions of the project. What we did on this project is that we selected, we made a pattern of flat tiles on like cladding material, which is terracotta in this case, on the entirety of the exterior. And so what we did is that we did a lot of research about, you know, can we create, well, first of all, understanding how do we manufacture and fabricate the tile, and then can we create a tile that doesn't need to be too complex, because if we lay a panel horizontally, for example, on this, every single tile would hit the geometry in a different way. So we would have to twist everything, right? So we did a lot of strategizing and design work that allowed us to create a tile system that would flow over the geometry and allow the tile to remain single curved and rectangular throughout the project, and work with the facade. And so once we found that, and you can see a little bit here, you see the tiles are kind of doing this, and then they're doing that. And then here they're starting horizontally, but then they flip here. So there is like a very kind of subtle, well, it's not so subtle on the interior, and I'll show you that in a moment, but a subtle way to kind of populate the tiles on the building. And then obviously we are working to optimize the system so that we minimize the amount of unique tiles. Now, the uniqueness in the tile is a lot has to do with the size of the tile, because we want the pattern to have a certain staggering kind of look. But then there's also how the tiles hit each of the cylinders, right? A very specific way. The process, this is happening in CATIA, but it has a couple of loops in different softwares as well. So we're writing kind of an interoperability tools that allows us to share the information instantly and or at least very quickly, without again causing us to have to stop the process. So the surface, once they're optimized and extracted in CATIA, they get unfolded. A pattern gets laid out on the surface, and then the pattern gets put back get folded back on the surfaces. And what that means is that every single tile, as I said, would remain single curved if they need to be, or flat, but they are all rectangular with 90-degree angles. And so it creates, again, it's linked to the way terracotta is being fabricated and how we process that. And it's also creating a very kind of rational, regular tiling element, but that allows us to create this kind of architecture. And this is, again, when the tiles are unfolded in CATIA, it's also generating a series of line drawings and a very kind of already some information that could be used later for documentation. We obviously in advance did a couple of workshops with a terracotta fabricator to study the tile. And those were some of the work that we did with them to try to figure things out. And here is, again, the flat tile on the flat surface, how it's been laid out one by one. And then we also study, again, different level of details, the relationship between the flat portion and the curved portion. So each of them will be attached in a certain way. So I think I'm showing you this to show that we are actually looking into the fabrication process, but also the erection process and how these things are going to be supported on the wall, just to make sure that what we're proposing is making sense, and that it does work with the ideas of like performance and buildability. This is an image from inside the project, where you see again that transition between a flat surface and a cylindrical surface. And then you can see here, this is where you see mostly how the patterns will flow around the wall. So it's very important for us to have the building itself connect completely geometrically and parametrically to the tiles, because every time the geometry of the building changes, we are confronted with movements everywhere. Like if a cylinder changes direction, the whole tile of the whole building will have to adjust itself. So I think being able to kind of design that in this way helped us tremendously. And then I wanted to show you also some of the images from some of the immersives that we had. In this particular project, we were working internally, but also with the client on different ways to visualize in some of these more constricted and complex space, like the atrium. It was very interesting for us to be able to bring them in a way that is more three-dimensional, and they don't have to necessarily understand a drawing or decipher a rendering, right? So they could actually be in the space. And so we're using these techniques very often to either kind of expose the DNA of the building, the understanding on how the pieces are coming together, but then also just as a way for them to them or us even to understand the relationship of the plans that they're receiving, for example, and the actual three-dimensionality of that. And then we're also working with schools. So this is the academia sector, teaching CATIA class or 3D experience class at SIRE, which is in Los Angeles as well. And the same technique that we use for our, office and the way we practice the architecture, then we translate these ideas with the students as well. And as they're learning how to use CATIA, and we're also using some of the collaborative apps, we're in SWIM and other communities and things like that. And so it's trying to get the students to pull from a different sets of tools and put them together to present a final composition that has been effectively developed in many, many different ways, just to communicate their ideas. So they're using a lot of different tools in order to do that. And there are not always within CATIA, but it's definitely driven and centralized in CATIA itself. So I think that's all I had for today.
Thank you very, very, very much, Kerenza. That was awesome. That was really great. Congratulations for the models at the end. What you're doing at your school, it's really, really interesting. And thank you so much for presenting the different projects for Morphosis. And thank you so much for being at our CATIA talk, which is, I believe, the very first session that we do. One of the very first session that we do on architecture. So have you
Cool.
been, yeah, you've been a CATIA champion for a long time. We've done a
Yeah.
lot of projects, so it's normal that you are one of our first guests for the CATIA Talk series on architecture. So
Thank you very much.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you again. And if, of course, if anyone has any questions, I will be happy to answer it on the chat pane on the right, as we're broadcasting this on our CATIA community. And thank you again, Kerenza.
Yeah, no problem. It was it's always interesting to be able to talk about some of these workflows and how we can integrate these types of platform in a quite a complex practice that requires many, many different tools, many different approaches and expertise. So I'm thanking you for inviting me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll see you soon and talk to you soon.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.